Hey, it's Ryan with S&B. Today we're going to be doing an install on our traction bar kit. This is kit number 101010 or 101011. These are going to fit all leaf sprung solid rear axle trucks. They're going to collapse as short as 50 inches and as long as 84 inches long. So we've got a ton of different options on how to mount them. I'll go through that in a second. But just first off, traction bar is a great addition to any leaf sprung solid rear axle truck. It's going to eliminate axle wrap. It's going to make that spring not have to try to control that axle wrap at acceleration and braking. So this is going to let you brake harder, accelerate harder. It becomes even more important when loaded and towing, which all these diesel trucks are designed to do. So it's really straightforward install, great addition to any leaf sprung truck. And we'll walk you through the install and kind of how the kit comes together here next. Starting with the bars first, we have two different options. This is our short gusset bar and we have a long gusset bar. The bars themselves operate identically. The only difference is aesthetically how long the gusset is on the bar here. So this is what we call the rear section of the bar, and then this is the forward section, and these are telescoping style, and that's how we get that adjustability. And then there's a coupler right here, and I'll show you how this all comes together in the install video. So no matter where we need these installed in the truck, anywhere between that 50 and 84 inch length, we're going to be able to telescope them together, drill through, install the coupler, and then it's one solid bar at that point. And so that's how we're able to offer one kit and fit every application. Next up, we've got our under axle mount here. So we have a couple different options. If you have a U-bolt down application like a GM or a Ford truck, our under axle mount right here installs really easily. You just remove the U-bolt nuts. You might need slightly longer U-bolts to accommodate this, and then we bolt this in. So it's real fast. If we have weld-on options too, so if you don't even want to mess with this, or you have a U-bolt up truck like a Dodge, the fastest application might just be to weld on our under axle mount. So overall, ton of different options, that whether you have a 3-inch, 3.5 inch, 4-inch, 4.25, or 4.5 inch axle, we have a under axle mount for your truck. Super straightforward install. We'll show you what we did on this truck here in a second. So we've gone ahead and already installed our under axle mounts. We had to go with slightly longer U-bolts on this truck, and this was a Duramax with solid square U-bolts. We converted it to F-top, which is the Ford style. We have a kit on our website to do that, 101058. Installs up here real easily. That gives a little better clamping force, and we stock all the F-top U-bolts, but that's a little extra work. If you want to just keep it with the square top, go with a longer one. Or if you're removing the traction control leaf down here, which we did on this truck too, which is great to do when installing traction bars since we don't need that anymore, you'll have enough length left on your factory U-bolt to just run in our under axle plate here. So this is our 101045. This is a 4.25 inch axle. So we've got these installed on both sides here. Real straightforward. We'll get onto the bar and the frame mount, which is the more complex part of the install. Pretty standard tools to do this install, drill, impact. We are going to use some 3/4 inch and some 9/16 sockets. All the hardware in here is 1/2 inch or 3/8. So those are the respective socket sizes. I've got a 3/4 inch wrench here. I've got some cutters to cut our fishing wire, 34 millimeter. I forget what the imperial size is, but for the standard size for this big 7/8 bolt, that's going to work. I've got an adapter to fit on my smaller 1/2 inch impact here. We're going to need our torque wrenches, obviously, a drill, and then I've got 1/4, 3/8, 7/16, 1/2, and 5/8 drill bits here. We're going to be using every one of those today. Just a little die grinder to help us trim off some of the flash after we drill some of the holes. Going to have red Loctite handy here. We've got some lubricant for our drill, and then we'll have a little bit of paint to paint the holes after we drill them. In the kit itself, if you got a bolt through kit, you're going to have all of your tab bolts here. This is the coupler for the bars, 3 O-rings in each coupler. This is the crush sleeve assembly. It's actually going to turn the 2 bars into 1. We've got our rear, this is actually backwards on here, but this is our rear bar mount assembly. So we have urethane bushings in all of our mounts on these bars, which is really important to let the suspension still articulate correctly. So these are the bushings in the rear of the bar. And then in the front, we've got 2 large bushings up here that also allow for full articulation. So unlike a lot of our competitors, our bars, you can still forklift the back tire up and have full travel without lifting up the other side. So the bars don't bind up at all. A lot of that is due to how we mount them, as well as our urethane bushings. We've got all of our logo plates here that come with the kit. I've already got them installed. Important to install these before you put these in the truck. So just 1/8 inch Allens, and they're serrated lock nuts or flange nuts on the back, so you don't even need a wrench on the back of them. I've got them on the outsides of our rear bars too. So we'll now move over. The first step is going to be to measure from the rear of the truck to the frame. Find a place that's in between that 50 and 84 inches that suits our underframe mount well. And then we can get that up there and marked and start getting that installed. So on this new L5P truck here, they've got this kick down on the frame, and it kind of restricts our options because if we go in front of it, the bar itself will hit this. There's not really any flat behind it. So I'm measuring from the under axle plate to here. We're sitting at about 56, 59, 60 inches to the middle of this thing. So we're in a good spot in between that threshold I gave you earlier. That's 50 and 84 inches. So we're now going to take our under axle, or under frame mount over here, and you can put it wherever you want. I mean, as long as it's a flat section, you can get to both sides. And if you have a beside frame, same thing still applies. So on this truck, I kind of want it just aesthetically centered between these holes. So I'll hold it up here and then have a friend come hold it in place while I mark the centers of my 8 holes on here, and then we can get to drilling. And it's also important to make sure you have a hole. I mean, most frames you will have a hole somewhere near to get that fish wire through if it's a truly boxed frame. I'm kind of cheating on this Duramax here. I've got easy access on both ends, so I won't even have to use the fish wire for the closer holes to this end. But on a truly boxed frame like a new Dodge or a Ford application, make sure you got a decent hole here where you can, fish your wire once you drill through the hole you drilled out here, and I'll show you how the whole process goes, but just make sure you have access somewhere nearby. And then I'm gonna start drilling now. I'm gonna use a 1/4 inch drill bit first, step to a 3/8, and then step to a 7/16, which will be our final drill bit size for these 3/8 inch tab bolts. If you have like step drill bits, there's the hybrid step style. You don't need to do all these steps, but for what we're doing today, I'm gonna step up 3 times. Got our 3/8 drill bit loaded up now. We're gonna come through and do another pass. We got the 7/16 drill bit loaded up for our final pass. So now we're gonna blow out get that ready for a light coat of paint. And I'm just gonna paint inside where I know my bracket's gonna be. Where I drilled all my holes. So we're gonna start working on pulling our first tab bolt in. Again, I said I can access some of mine, but I'm still gonna do them the way you would do it if you had a fully boxed frame. So we're gonna get our bracket, cut a piece of our piano wire over here, and bring one of our tab bolts. And this is the hardest one to get to for me, so I'm gonna do this one here. So we need to go through our bracket first, and then we can set the bracket down on the lift. Get enough wire through it. And then at this point, wherever your hole is on the frame that I mentioned earlier that you need to find, we're going to come out that hole. We can actually leave that up there now, but. So we're gonna go, step one is through the hole in the back of the tab bolt. And then I'm just gonna put a little twist in this thing so it can't pull through. Once that's done, we'll pull that snug. And we're gonna get as many wraps around the threads as we can. And we're gonna make these as tight as we possibly can. And the more wraps you do here, the better this is going to work. So that's prepped now. Now pull this through. And just like that, we're into place. What I'll do is take my deep 9/16 and you can pause that for a second. We'll take one of our washers and nuts, get that started once we have any of the bolts in there. And then that'll help pull the rest of this one through. Then I can cut this now. Back here, install our other one. Not have that on video. There we go. And that's what your tab bolt will look like installed. So the first tab bolt in, we can install the bracket loosely. This is just going to make sure that tab bolt doesn't fall through. Now the process would be identical to keep fishing through the rest. Again, I'm fortunate I can get my hand to these. So I'm going to do the second one. Like so. So I had one hole that didn't quite line up. It was basically I was drilling right next to an existing hole, so it just walked over and it didn't line up perfectly. So I went ahead and pushed up on my bracket, tightened them down, and then I chased through with that 7/16 drill bit a little bit and got those cleaned up. So I'm gonna put a little bit of paint back on the bracket, and then I will start finishing up with my tab bolts. I'm gonna show you one more time here, because on this far enough away, it's faster for me to fish it than to try to fight it by hand. So we're gonna push this out the end here. So our wire is going through our bracket, through the frame, out the end. Again, we're gonna go first through the hole in the tab bolt and just put a little shape in the back of it so it can't go through there. And then we're gonna start wrapping. And again, the more wraps, the better. And actually, if you hit every thread, the wire will stay closer to the bolt and lets you pull it through easier. So that bolt's ready now. We'll pull it through. And it drops literally right into place. We'll pull down on it as much as we can. And then the wire comes out. So we've got the frame mount installed in the truck, and all these 3/8 nuts go to 33 foot-pounds. And we've already got those all torqued down. So we're gonna now go ahead and get the rear bar section installed next. So for the rear bar bushing section here, we can go ahead and press the bushing in first. This is the bolt, 1/2 inch long, and by I think 3.5 or 4 inch long bolt, and then 1/2 inch washer, 1/2 inch nut. We have these two bushings, urethane bushings for the rear, and then our compression limiter. So we can go ahead and press one of these in from this side, and then from over here, we're going to press in from the other side, and that completes the bushing stack on the rear. Now we can go ahead and get the rear bar and install it into the truck since the bushing kit is in. To do so, we're just gonna tilt this up. Bolt in. And then washer and nut. So we can go ahead and install the front bushing stack next. So small bushing towards the front of the truck, big washer, big bolt, and make sure your O-rings are installed. We can press that in, and there's an O-ring groove in there, so you'll actually feel when it snaps in. It just did. And on this side, go ahead and install our O-ring. Which is in, and then our bushing into that. Next, we can go ahead and pre-assemble our coupler. So the two smaller O-rings are gonna go farthest away from the hole. And I'll show you in a second, there's O-ring grooves in the coupler itself. So there's one, there's two, and then the larger O-ring goes in the groove on this end. With all the O-rings installed, we can now slide the coupler, the smaller end, up the tube. Be careful, we're not going to scratch the powder coat here. We can now slide the front tube into the rear section. Very important here, we do not want to slide this more than it's going to be once it's installed. And the reason for that is it'll scratch the powder coat and then it'll be visible. We have about an inch of buffer with the coupler that we can hide, but it's just good practice to not slide it more than the final distance. So we'll slide in, slide in, slide in. We went a little bit too far, but it's only like a ½ inch, so not a huge deal. We can get our bolt started here. Next up, I'm going to take some red Loctite and get the threads on our big 7/8 bolt. And then I'm going to run this in with an impact. You're not going to be able to tighten this by hand because you got to hold this with your just only your hand here. So the shank on that bolt is the compression limiter. We want to get that as tight as we possibly can with the red Loctite. We'll come back and torque that later. But now we've got it pretty tight, so we know the bar's in the right position and we can start drilling our holes. First, we're going to take a 1/4 inch drill bit and we're going to drill through the pilot hole on the outer tube into the inner tube. We're going to drill this on both sides from the outside in. Do not try to drill all the way across. We need these to line up perfectly. We're going to repeat the process on the inside. I have a little bit of clearance beneath the fuel tank here. If you have to take the bar off the truck to drill this hole, you can do so by sharpieing where the hole needs to be drilled and then remove the bar real quick and drill it off the truck and then go back on. But thankfully, I'm gonna be able to get this done from the inside here. All just depends on your install location. Now I'm gonna step up to a 3/8 inch drill bit. Same process, one hole from the outside in on each side. Now we're stepping up to a 1/2 inch hole on both sides. And for the final hole, we're going to drill a 5/8. Now this is only going to be on the outside. Do not drill a 5/8 hole on the inside of this. This will make sense in a second on how we clamp the bars together, but there will need the outer two need to be a 5/8. The inner two need to remain at that 1/2 inch. So we're going to open this up to 5/8 right now. Now I'm going to take a die grinder and we'll deburr right around this hole. We're going to slide the coupler over the tube now. And the big side on the coupler will be facing outwards. We're now going to take our crush sleeve assembly. The washer and the nut are going to go on the back side. We're going to push the 12 point bolt and the chromoly sleeve into the hole here. And then I've got a dead blow right here. I'm just going to tap this across. And I'm going to go look from behind and make sure my threads are lined up. Looks like. Now I've got I see the 1/2 inch bolt coming through, so I'm going to finish tapping this thing home. like so. And on the back side, we have our threads protruding now, so we can install this. And at this step too, if you're in a real corrosive environment, you can seal up around this sleeve with a little bit of silicone before this bolt goes in, and make sure that no water can get in there and rust the two pipes together. We have O-rings in here as well, but it never hurts to add a little bit of silicone right inside the bolt and inside the washer. So we've got a 3/4 inch nut on the back side and then a 9/16 12 point. And that gets torqued, we'll come back in a second and torque that to 100 foot-pounds. Now we're gonna go ahead and snug up the rear. And then come back and we're gonna torque this to 100 foot-pounds as well. So now we can go ahead and torque down the main 7/8 bolt to 125 foot-pounds. So once everything's torqued down, your install is complete. A few things to note that are important with these bars is using a 2-post lift. You just need to be a little careful. You might have the arm under this bar, but the pad on the frame, and the arm might not be touching the bar, but once the suspension unloads, this bar is gonna come down with the suspension. So it's really important to make sure you have a ton of clearance and to watch the bar if you're lifting the truck with a 2-post lift. You can also just drop the bar out at the front or the rear if needed. So that's probably the biggest thing. If you have any questions during the install, please give us a call. We've seen a ton of installs on every single application. We probably have good advice and can get you back on track. A few different options, but really everything kind of installs the same way with the adjustable bar itself. So give us a call if you got any questions. Thanks for your time.